Welcome to the Calumet Roundtable. I'm your host, Tom Roach. I'm joined today by my guest, Dr. Dan Dunn, and we are going to discuss the 2016 presidential election. Dan, we've talked about some of this already, so we're going to go into maybe some different topics today.
Sure.
Let's start with something that got a lot of news coverage here, the Billy Bush tape.
Yeah.
So,
what are my thoughts on that?
But maybe we should recap what this is, right?
Go ahead.
What year did this happen? And this is
2004, I think, or 2005.
Yeah. So this is pretty old. Trump was in a mobile home. He was mic'd for something, and he was off camera because the shots of the outside of the mobile home, but he was talking.
Yeah.
And he said some rather crude things about how he approaches women.
Yes.
So let's discuss the impact of that a little bit.
You know, when the tape came out,
yes,
he issued all these denials, and he was given, I think, an opportunity in the second debate by Anderson Cooper, and Anderson Cooper, I think, just pushed him, and he said that he never did this stuff. He just talked about this stuff. Now, when you have, I know you teach this in your public relations classes.
Yeah.
When you have bad news, you don't want just one news cycle. What he could have done, because it said, I don't want to go there. I'm a changed man. I talked to my minister, and I've talked to him, and I'm just a different man. But he didn't do that. Instead, he denied it. And once he denied it, then you have all these accusations coming out, and then they take up news stories. And then, and it also was reinforced in the first debate when Hillary spoke about the former beauty pageant who had put on weight, and he's tweeting at 3 o'clock in the morning. Who tweets at 3 o'clock in the morning about something like this? So it really hurt him.
So from a campaign strategy standpoint, a public relations standpoint, when you're accused of something, if you did it, it's almost always best to admit it immediately. You go through some rough times for a couple days, and then it goes away. If you deny it, people keep coming back with more charges and more charges. This is essentially what happened with Tiger Woods. This is what happened with Nixon with Watergate. It goes from one news cycle to 10 to 20 to 30, and here he's still dealing with it, and he could have been behind him at this point.
And he just further intensified the situation by then bringing up Bill Clinton and some of his behavior in the 90s. You want it to go away. That's one of the lessons that Kennedy taught us, and I know I mentioned this last time, with the Bay of Pigs invasion. Now, that's not the same thing, but that was a fiasco, and Kennedy assumed responsibility, apologized, and it cut the losses that he would have experienced.
An interesting comparison, too, I think, is Gary Hart. So Gary Hart was charged with having an affair with Donna Rice, right?
Yes.
We got this? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And this was the election.
It was the 88 election.
88 election, yes. The Dukakis-Bush election, And Hart had denied this initially, right? So when he realized that he couldn't get out from under this, first of all, they were on a boat called Monkey Business. And there was a picture of him with her sitting on his lap in front of the boat with Monkey Business written on the side of the boat in the background, right? And it ended up, I think, on the cover of People magazine. So he denied it, and then all of a sudden there was no denying it, right? So he had a dilemma now, because if he admitted it, it made the charge of sexual infidelity go away, but it was an admission to lying, right? And we know from all the way back to Aristotle, right, that our trustworthiness is more important than any arguments that we're making. So if admitting to something makes you less trustworthy and not more trustworthy, it sort of negates the value of the admission, right? So I know this is getting complicated, but do you think that Trump was in that kind of a situation because this was what he was saying was so crude
Right.
and so offensive that to admit it and make it go away, even though that would work in most cases, right, wasn't going to do him any good here.
Maybe, but I think it would have created less damage. I mean, he was, you know, because the other thing, and at the time, he was 59 years old or 60,
Right,
so he wasn't a baby. You know, it wasn't like
Right.
something he had done in college.
Although I seem wiser now that I'm not 59
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah.
I feel that way.
Yeah, me too, you know. But I think that strategically, you know, you don't want an issue like this to be dominating
No,
the
certainly,
campaign.
and I would have just told him to acknowledge it and move on.
Yeah.
But another interesting thing about this is he said that was just locker room conversation. So when he did finally get around to admitting it, he tried to dismiss it as saying it was locker room conversation. Now, it seems to me that's a pretty theoretical argument there, because what he's acknowledging then is that we say things in private that are okay to say in private that aren't okay to say in public. And so his argument was essentially that what I said wasn't so bad considering it was in private. What's bad is that somebody made this public. Right. It's the difference between private communication and public address, essentially, right?
Right.
So, I mean, it seems to me, you know, not that makes what he said okay, but it seems to me there's some validity to that argument. That eavesdropping on somebody and making something public
that was private that is wrong.
Yeah.
But how he handled it, again, this just kept staying in the news, and you know, you have it feeds into, in the last debate when he's referring Hillary Clinton as saying something at the end, he said that nasty woman. So for him to win, he has to, and this is a historic election, you know, and there's some people that they wouldn't admit it, but they wouldn't be comfortable voting for a woman.
Right.
It's something really new. So that's out there, and for him to win, he has got to draw suburban, white, Republican, college-educated women. He didn't do anything to help himself with that.
No, certainly.
He didn't do anything to help himself.
Probably there aren't a lot of women that were going to vote for him because of that statement.
Yeah, you know, and he can't win.
Yeah.
If he does not, he's got a following that will follow him no matter what.
Isn't the bigger issue here then that usually people who run for president spend their whole lives preparing themselves for that? They, you know, Gary Hart, we mentioned, changed his name from Hart Pence to Hart, right? You know, developed a Boston accent because he wanted to sound like the Kennedys.
Yeah.
You know, and he managed his career to get him to that point. Hillary Clinton managed her career to get to this point, right? Trump hasn't been doing any of that. So, I mean, is part of what we're seeing here that you really can't just decide to run for president at some point, that you really need to be managing this public persona your whole life in order to do that. And isn't that, in fact, why we speculate that, you know, that Daniels pulled himself out of the race, you know, an election or two ago, or that, you know.
Well, Daniels had some, in addition to that, Daniels had some personal family issues.
Well, that's what I mean. So he hadn't managed his life to, you know.
And he did not want that to interfere with the election.
Supposedly.
Yeah, supposedly.
Yeah.
Supposedly, but
this guy's our boss, so you know, I don't want to jump to conclusions here.
Right. But but with Trump, you know, Trump was able to get there, you know, because you had 16 candidates, and you know, he was getting tremendous news because he was managing that the news shows would have him on, he would call in, so he was getting so much more publicity. You know, because you do have, if you go back to Eisenhower, for example, he was a general. Now he was in public service. Both parties wanted him, but you know,
he came with all of this political, with all of this media cachet, right? Yeah. Well, so just getting back to this idea of having prepared yourself for this or not prepared yourself for us. One of the terms that applies to this is political correctness. Now I know, you know, we mean different things by that. It's used in different ways. But in this sense, it's being able to anticipate how the public's going to react to things that you're going to say, and so you express yourself in ways that are going to disturb the least number of people, essentially, right? And so Trump, having never been practiced at this,
right.
Says a lot of things that are inappropriate. But one of the things that's intriguing to me is, as I think, and I'm just wondering what you think about this, I think that some people are voting for him because
yes.
he's not being politically correct. And so when he does something that we say, oh, you can't do that, that's going to damage your campaign, it's actually getting him votes from a certain element of the public.
There is a segment of the public, no matter what he says or does, they will vote for him. I think he said in the campaign, I could shoot somebody in New York and they'd still vote for me. And I think that there's a group out there.
As could Hillary and still get some of her votes, I'm sure, although she's less likely to do that.
Yeah, but, I think that his behavior in the campaign, has created, he's dominating the news cycle with things that are not attractive, because the media will always go after drama. And so
conflict.
You want conflict because you want
novelty.
ratings. And he's very novel. And I think the other thing that has happened to him in the campaign, in the moving towards the nomination, there were 16 people. So when he's in a debate, he's not going to get a whole lot of questions.
Right.
It's unclear how much he really prepares for these debates, because if we look at the last debate, he was stronger in the first half hour than he was in the final hour, and so he
gets on these riffs.
Yeah.
Where he's just being spontaneous.
Yeah. And the other thing that I want to stress with him, because I think that this is so important, and it's going to be the only reference I'm going to make to the Kennedy Nixon
last 30
debate.
seconds here, then we break. Oh,
okay. Maybe I'll do it after when we come back.
Okay, all right. We'll make that connection when we get back. So I guess what we're saying then is that he's made some blunders by normal expectations for what you do when you want to be president, but he's never fit that mold.
Right.
And some of the support that he's getting is actually from people who appreciate the fact that he's not following
and he's
those
brought
lines.
in people that haven't voted before. He's got a segment out there of people who have not voted before.
And certainly you can break them down into different groups. You've got Tea Party, things like this. But there's a certain, I think, anti-intellectual element that's always been active in American politics. And I think they're, these are the people who voted for the wrestler in Minnesota. And things like that. Yeah.
Because if you look at this historically, if we go back to 1950, the only time a party in power got a third term was in the 88 campaign because Dukakis was so weak. So you would think that this would be the Republicans' turn. But
it doesn't look
he's
that
not
way
been
now.
the ideal
Yes.
candidate.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. The Calumet Roundtable will be right back. Welcome back to the Calumet Roundtable. I'm your host, Tom Roach. My guest today is Dr. Dan Dunn, and we're continuing our discussion on the Hillary and Donald show. Dan, let's start off with talking about something that maybe hasn't come up too much. What about the nonverbals? We know about what people are saying. What are they communicating nonverbally?
And I want to go back to Kennedy and Nixon just for a moment. Nixon was hospitalized and because he had phlebitis, and in the hospital he probably would like some wine. They're not going to give him wine. They're going to give him juice. He might want pizza. They're not going to give him pizza. They'll give him boiled chicken. He might want a banana split. They're going to end up giving him Jell-O. So he lost a lot of weight, and his suit didn't fit. Okay, so he looked as if, and he wore a light suit against a light background, and his nonverbal behavior, his eye contact, he was going back and forth.
He was always shifty looking. I mean, let's
So
say that. I mean,
he did not look his best, and then he didn't wear makeup, and that of course changed everything. Well, they're all wearing makeup now, but non-verbally, in the first debate, if you looked at his body movement compared to her, then in the second debate, he's moving all over the place. He's invading her space.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of Jaws with the shark.
He had these looks on his face, and then what you have
menacing
now,
looks.
What you have now that you didn't have back then is Saturday Night Live. So they've come out and they have Alex Baldwin, I think is his name, is playing Donald Trump.
I'm going to write Baldwin in when I vote.
And so Saturday Night Live is not helping Donald Trump.
No.
And so
I mean, I don't know that that's necessarily hurting him. I think that's debatable because they are making him seem a little more accessible, a little lovable in some ways. I mean, Baldwin's, there's something empathetic about Baldwin when he's doing that. Maybe, I don't know. I'm just saying it might not be hurting him that much, but yes, but certainly calling attention to his nonverbals.
You're calling attention to his nonverbal behavior.
Yeah.
And then, you have the news shows always playing excerpts of Donald Trump.
Right.
So, but it does speak to, historically, again, when we go back to Kennedy and Nixon, that's why that debate was so significant, because it really changed everything. Now, of course, they all dress a certain way. They make sure that they have a dark suit against an appropriate background, unlike Nixon.
Right.
Nixon didn't wear any makeup.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to bring up that reference, because Nixon, he just didn't look presidential,
No.
And
but I always thought he looked sort of like one of those criminal characters from the Dick Tracy cartoon. I don't remember the guy's name, but that was my take on it. Anyway, so again, I think some of these nonverbals even, they're kind of like what he's saying. They're alienating some people, but they're making some people more likely to vote for him because they're seeing someone who doesn't care what people think. They're seeing someone who isn't afraid to express himself and make the faces that he wants to make. Right.
There's a core out there that love him.
Yeah.
But again, and I don't want to be repetitive, I don't know that he's expanding his base. I don't know he's going beyond that, and I think he needs more. Well, if he's going to win.
He does, because I don't think he's. We both know that we're saying that he's going to lose this in a landslide.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I think is happening is that the more outrageous he becomes, I think the less willing people are to publicly acknowledge that they support him.
Right.
And I asked some friends of mine who are in neighborhoods with Trump signs to tell me when the Trump signs start going down. And after this video came out, with the recording of him making his comments about women when he was in the mobile home, the signs started coming down.
Yeah.
So I think he's. But I don't know if he lost the votes of the people who took the signs down, because I think what's happening is they're not willing to publicly say they're supporting him anymore.
Right.
But I don't know that they're not still supporting him. So the real impact of that is that he's losing the affiliation appeal that he might have been getting from people who were openly supporting him in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
And you have some Republicans that are kind of in a bind, because they are not really comfortable with some of the things he said. Like when he said that he would not accept the results of the election. One of the hallmarks of our democracy is the peaceful transfer of power. I mean, and that then becomes a big news, and you have Republicans trying to distance themselves. On the other hand, you've had several Republicans that took their endorsement away and gave it back to him because they were afraid of alienating his base, because he does have a strong base out there.
Right.
You know.
Well, so let's talk about that for a second. So this sense that we're a civilized democracy, and we always have this peaceful transfer of power. That is one of the things that makes us unique as a nation. You know, I'm a professor at a university, and I believe that, and I, you know, talk about things like that with my students. Do you think the average person thinks about that?
I think the average person won't initially think about it, but then think of the gods, the media. The media is going to start talking about it, and then people are going to get concerned. And but
when we say the media now, right? I mean, we can't really talk about it as if it's one entity, because some people are watching the right-wing media, Fox News, they're listening to Rush Limbaugh, and some people are watching, you know, more liberal media, be listening to public radio or something that's right.
You know, and I try to encourage my students, you know, because I try to keep my own political positions out of my classroom unless I slip, have a senior moment. But I want them to, if television is their main source, because I watch Fox. I want them to watch Fox. I want them to watch CNN, and I want them to watch MSNBC and hear all these different perspectives. And so, but I think.
But what I'm saying is, we're not reaching everybody with this stuff, right?
No.
You know, half of the people who are voting didn't go to college. And I'm just wondering if these issues come up when they're playing cards with their friends, or they're standing around the copy machine at work. And if they don't, then maybe, you know, some of us are talking about things that are important to us that maybe really aren't impacting the election. If you to what extent do you think that's true?
I think, you know, to a certain extent, there are some people that, again, they're already there. You have about 40% on each side, and so it's really that 20% that is going to change these elections. And I think that, you know, so a lot of the independent voters, this you're right, for some people it doesn't matter, but for those people that are independents and they tend to vacillate from one party to the next, I do think that can have some significance. And I think that you know, the overall tone of this election, you know, you have Hillary talking more about hope, and you have Trump talking a little bit more about fear.
So part of this is you know, trying to support the process, and it's, you know, it's acknowledging that, you know, you're conceding the election before all the votes are counted because you're trying to be a good sport, or you won the popular vote but not the electoral vote, and you take it, you know, in stride and concede. But part of it too has to do with decorum, right? About how we talk to one another and treat one another. And you know, one of the changes I think I've seen in sports over my lifetime is we don't really talk about fair play anymore. It's you know, we really just admire the people that try the hardest to win, and I think that that seems to be true in politics right now. We're looking at candidates that will do and say anything to win the race, and I don't think that was always the case, but maybe it was. What are your thoughts on that? I think part of what we're seeing is a result of people sort of taking the gloves off.
Yes, you know, I think that
socially,
you know, you have some candidates that, you know, they're polling everything and they're developing their positions, and then you have some purists. Going back to a guy like Barry Goldwater, for example. I mean, his theme, I remember in the California primary, a choice, not an echo. That I'm a man of principle, and he lost that election, but if it had impact politically, and he was Reagan's mentor. So you have some candidates that are purists. But you have, you know, most people fall a little bit to the right of center, and a little bit to the left of center. Elections are won in the middle.
So you were saying that the purists are least likely to treat their opponents with respect, then?
No, I'm saying the purists are least likely to use the polling data as an indicator of their positions. They are more, I think campaigns are either issues or image oriented. And I think that your extremes are more issues oriented. You know, the people in the middle are much more image oriented.
But if you're, whatever your motivation is though, I mean, you know, what about the fact that we don't think it's important to be nice to one another anymore?
That's another, you know, that's another, and these things are getting nastier.
And I saw this in the campaign with Obama, the attacks on Obama. Some of the things that I saw coming through email and things like that were offensive to me. And I didn't, you know, I don't know that we have a history of candidates attacking one another like that before. You know, they were just really inappropriate things. I wished I hadn't seen them. They popped up on my screen. I wished I hadn't seen them. You know, am I right? Is that new, or has that always been around? I mean, did Teddy Roosevelt do things like that? Did Franklin?
I think that with this 24/7 news cycle, I think that, and you have all media really attempting to create some sort of drama, I think that things have gotten much more tense than they used to be, and there's a lot more anger out there, I think, you know, and so our elections are just a little bit different than they used to be,
okay. Well, that's all the time we have for our program. Thank you to Dr. Dan Dunn, for joining me.
My pleasure, Tom.
Today on the Calumet Roundtable. I'm your host, Tom Roach. Have a great day.